and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage three-time Grammy Award winner Ricky Kej in conversation with my colleague Shivani Gupta. Thank you, Ricky, for being here, and thank you to our lovely audiences as well. Ricky, as we just saw in this AV presentation, you talked about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is interestingly the motto of the Indian G20 presidency. I want to begin by asking you, you have this bent where you propagate Indian philosophy, including our Indian philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Tell me, where does that come from? Why do you have this bent that you go around the world and share this Indian philosophy?
So first of all, a huge honor to be interviewed by you here.
Thank
you. You know, I'm a huge fan of yours.
Honor is all mine.
So, growing up, I've always been two things. I've been an environmentalist and I've been a musician. These are two pillars that have pretty much dictated my life and all of my life decisions. And coming to Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that's at the heart of our civilization, at the heart of our traditions, at the heart of who we are as Indians. And Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam literally means the world is one family, as all of us know. But it means coexistence, and if you have to literally translate it into English. And for some reason, when we think about coexistence, we only think about living in peace and harmony among all of us human beings. Because somewhere along our journey of being human beings all over the world, we've forgotten that we are not the only species on this planet. We're just one among millions and millions of species. And true Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam has always meant living in absolute peace and absolute harmony with every single entity on this planet, whether living or non-living. So not only among all of us human beings, which we're not doing a very good job of right now, but also among all life, the forest and wildlife, and also the elements of nature, that is the land we walk on, the water we drink, the air we breathe. So this is something that I believe that if we practice true coexistence and true Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is one earth, one family, one common future, then all of these environmental problems will be history.
So share a little bit about your journey, because you grew up in Bengaluru, right? And you even studied Indian classical music when you were here. How did the switch happen to, to being abroad and the music you do now? And how has that journey been like? First of all, share your experience as an Indian when you first ventured outside of India.
So of course, growing up in Bangalore and also, doing non-mainstream music, not doing Bollywood music, not doing what is considered to be pop music in India. Creating music from the heart, creating music based on my own thoughts, my own philosophy, mainly about the environment and nature. Things like the Grammy Awards and things like, these kind of international recognitions were unattainable dreams, or things that I did not even think were my goals, or, things that I would just watch on television and that was the end of it. But then again, winning my first Grammy Award in 2015 was absolutely amazing. It was a huge pat on my back, and and it gave me a lot of encouragement to do things further. But everything that I do around me is Indian because I make music from the heart. So an Indian like me, when I make music, it is always going to be Indian. It's just like, let's say if you have to take a comparison, if an Indian person is making food for his or her family, they want to make like a pasta, very authentic Italian pasta. They'll have the best of ingredients and, and the best quality stuff and, a very authentic pasta. But then, just before it goes to the dining table, into the hands of the family, there'll be a little bit of chili powder and turmeric powder thrown in.
Or maybe a sprinkle of dhania, fresh dhania.
Exactly, a sprinkle of some coriander or something like that. So that's exactly how I am as a person. No matter how much I try to make music that is completely and authentically Western, there'll always be an Indian element in everything that I do. So I guess that's how, growing up in India, I'm an Indian musician, and that's all that I can define myself as.
But can I ask you, how is it when you started working with non-Indians, if I can put it like that, to make your music, co-produce and co-make your music? What is the difference that you see from the time when you first ventured out to today? Because, as we celebrate India's G20 presidency, the one thing that everybody's talking about is India's place in the world and how Indians are seen and perceived in the world. So could you share, has that changed over the years in your experience?
So again, these are strictly my own personal opinions. So when I started off collaborating with musicians in the West, it was always a sprinkling of Indian music. You know, the music would be primarily Western, and there would be a little bit of a sitar thrown in, or a little bit of a tabla thrown in. So it was just flavoring that they wanted to make it feel a little exotic. But now there is a little bit of mainstreaming of Indian culture and Indian traditions and Indian musical traditions all over the world. So, and this cannot be isolated from what is happening in India in general. Because being a United Nations, Global Goodwill Ambassador and traveling around the world on environmental causes, working with various agencies like the WHO, with the UNCCD, with the UNFCCC and with UNICEF, I've realized that in the past what would happen is that India was always on the sidelines when it came to making these important, these important international decisions and these intergovernmental decisions. And now India is not only participating very actively but taking leadership. And that has trickled down into all of our, into arts and culture too, where, we are taking the leadership right now. It's very easy to collaborate with Indian musicians, and people have started realizing that, because we Indian musicians are the best at improvising in the whole world.
Like everything else.
Like
in
everything
life.
else, exactly. So we're easy to work with in any way, and that's also with arts and culture. You can give us a piece of rock music and we'll be able to play a top line on that. We'll be able to play a sitar solo on it. We'll be able to make it our own, And, and so right now the collaborations that are happening between Indian musicians and the Western musicians and our counterparts over there is now more like 50-50% collaborations, where there's a mutual respect and admiration for both cultures, and both cultures are equally respected. So that's what I'm seeing right now, that, that right now we are being taken far more seriously, and we are taking leadership when it comes to arts and culture.
Absolutely. I do want to ask you, coming back to environmentalism and, the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam philosophy, one world, one family, one future philosophy. India currently is playing a huge role in that. I mean, despite being a developing country, we want to lead the world when it comes to that message. I remember the Prime Minister recently said, you can milk nature, but you shouldn't be abusing nature. Obviously, there is a relationship where humans need nature and you can milk it, but not to a level where it becomes abuse. And obviously India's climate change goals or climate goals, India is setting great pace in that. How do you see that, since you believe so strongly in it? Do you feel that India is doing what it can do and can play a leadership role in this regard?
Yeah, definitely. Prime Minister Modi, in fact, is very, very committed towards these climate goals, and and is a very, very strong environmentalist from the heart. That's what I have seen in him. At the same time, there are so many things that India is doing, whether it's the Solar Alliance or whether it is, whether it is our commitment towards reducing plastics pollution. We tabled a plastics resolution at the UN Environmental Assembly, nitrogen resolution. So we are taking a huge leadership when it comes to all of this. But what excites me the most is the life mission of Prime Minister Modi. Because the life mission is absolutely amazing, because I've always believed, and I've said this time and again for many years at a lot of my concerts. If any of you have come to my concerts, I constantly repeat this, that the biggest threat to us as a species is the constant thought that we have that somebody else will make a difference. We're always waiting for governments, for intergovernmental bodies, for NGOs, for corporations to make a difference, when the truth is that the only way we can bring about meaningful change is if we change ourselves. And the reason why we don't change ourselves is not because we're evil people. It's simply because we have not empowered ourselves to believe that the small, tiny, incremental changes that we can make within our own lives actually matter. And that's what this life mission is all about by Prime Minister Modi, that, it's all about putting the power back in our own hands, in the individual's hands, to be the change that they want to see in this world. And it's about buying, not just buying anything that you see, buying only things that you need, with a lot of deliberation, with a lot of mindfulness, and reusing everything, upscaling everything. So I believe that this is something that is really, which will really capture everybody's imagination everywhere in the world, and this will bring about meaningful change.
Do you see India finally taking a leadership role, not just in this sphere, but generally? We just had a very successful moon landing as well. We are now aiming for the sun. You are winning Grammys every year for us, so you're representing us as well. And there is so much in arts and culture, or science and technology, in politics and diplomacy. Do you see that India is moving closer to its goal of Vishwa Guru and Vishwamitra?
I think that's already there. It's already there in a huge way. I mean that India's looked upon as a complete leader when it comes to arts and culture. It is an ancient,
Actually, I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. When people look at India, they look at it how? Especially for an artist like you, do they look at India as an ancient culture that has a lot of knowledge to give, or a land of great arts and culture? Or today they look at it as the most populous country in the world, which is a great economic market, or a science and technology hub? How do you think the world views us?
I think the world views us with a lot of respect, especially when it comes to our musical talent. When an Indian musician plays abroad, especially a classical musician, they are they're given tremendous respect for their skill, especially their skill, as I mentioned, when it comes to improvisation and when it comes to completely and absolutely wowing an audience. So recently, as you may know, I did this version of the Indian national anthem where...
I was going to come to that. I was saving it for the last, but anyways, go ahead.
So I did this version of the Indian national anthem where I conducted a 100-member British orchestra, that is the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. And of course, I've collaborated with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra a few times in the past, and they are my favorite orchestra in the world. And when I told them this idea that let's record the Indian national anthem with a 100-piece orchestra, they were of course very excited about it. And the reason why I wanted to record the Indian national anthem with a symphony orchestra is that India is like a symphony orchestra if you look at it as a country. Because in a symphony orchestra, you've got varied instruments, like you've got a violin, which is a soft instrument, then you've got a timpani, which is a loud instrument, you've got a harp, soft instrument, you've got a tuba, which is a very, very loud instrument. And every instrument has got their own unique personality. A violin is not trying to be a tuba is not trying to be a timpani is not trying to be a harp is not trying to be a euphonium. But at the same time, when all of them play together, they sound absolutely beautiful and in beautiful harmony, and they sound as one. So everybody is not trying to be each other, but everybody is maintaining the unique personality, but somehow the whole thing is working together. And that's how I believe India is as a country, and that's how people view India everywhere else in the world. So that is why I wanted to bring this symphony orchestra as an absolute metaphor as to what India is as a country.
Absolutely, that's great. Share a little bit about that experience. What does it mean when you play the Indian national anthem with a 100-piece orchestra? What does that do to you?
So on a personal level, everybody of course the anthem became quite popular, so everybody in the country watched it as a video, but I was in the room when that 100-piece orchestra was actually playing it, and I was completely mesmerized, goosebumps everywhere, and it was absolutely amazing. And I really wanted to work with this particular orchestra, the Royal Philharmonic, for this particular piece, and at Abbey Road Studios. And of course, the added the added narrative of the whole thing was that that after ruling us for 200 years,
I know the subtext was huge.
The subtext was huge. That that it felt good that a British orchestra was playing our Indian national anthem, and I even mentioned this to the orchestra before they actually played the national anthem, and they were very respectful about it, and they really wanted to give their best. The idea over there, which made me really proud, was that when I mentioned this to them, they really wanted to give their absolute best for this. And as I've mentioned, I've collaborated with them in the past, and I can tell you with full conviction that this was their best performance for me ever. And that showed that, that how much they wanted to do for India and how beautifully they wanted to gift this piece of music to India.
Well, thank you so much for doing that for us. It was a great way to celebrate our Independence Day gone by. And before I end, a big round of applause for Ricky Kej for doing that for India. I do have one more question to ask you, because I don't want to leave you without asking you this. I think there's a big buzz about India being renamed, rebranded. I don't know how to put it, because we've always been known as Bharat, but there is a buzz that the government may officially use the term Bharat instead of where we used India. One, what do you make of that? And as a representative and an ambassador of India globally, what would you say is the difference for an artist like you when you say Bharat versus India?
Okay, so my opinion on this is that, being from India, we have to be as Indian as possible, and being Indian would be, Bharat. So I believe, I love the term Bharat, and I would be very proud to call myself a Bhartiya.
A Bhartiya composer. Excellent. I think I have just about a minute. Maybe I can take an audience question, Shireen, if you have somebody with you.
Yes, Shivani, we have a question over here.
Ricky, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When it comes to music, we see that there is a big disconnect between Bollywood music or classical music, even if we look at its penetration within the country. My point is that how can or who can play a pivotal role in moving classical music throughout the world when we know that Indians are settled all throughout in the world as such?
No, that's a good question. I've got like a minute to answer that. Yeah. Okay. So the thing is that when you look at, again, strictly my personal opinions. So when you look at Bollywood music is popular all over the world. And you have Bollywood singers and composers. They perform everywhere in the world. They are able to fill up complete stadiums and all of that stuff. They get huge audiences. But barring a few exceptions, pretty much everybody who's in that audience is people from the Indian diaspora. Because Bollywood, in my opinion, has not broken cultural barriers. Bollywood is stuck with the Indian diaspora, whereas the people who have actually broken cultural barriers are our classical musicians. In fact, when I was 19 years old, I had gone and watched a Pandit Ravi Shankar concert, and I was very surprised that the demographic of the people inside the theater was very representative of the demographic of the city itself. So he had actually broken cultural barriers, and he reached out with his pure Indian classical music to varied audiences all over the world, so much so that he had almost mainstreamed his sitar instrument all over the world. And it's the same with all the classical musicians in India. And the second thing is that if you look at, I've coined something known as the Ravi Shankar syndrome in India. Okay, now conversely, if you look at India, everybody knows who Pandit Ravi Shankar was. Greatest sitarist ever, Bharat Ratna winner, daughters are Anushka Shankar, Nora Jones, everybody knows that. I challenge you, anybody in the audience can name one album of his. He's done more than 20 albums. Name one album of his. Okay, name a song of his. Okay, hum a tune of his. Absolutely not. And that's because we are not appreciating our own talent, which the world is appreciating. And I guess that it should come from within all of us to appreciate our own talent.
Absolutely. Ricky, as always, pleasure to speak to you. Continue to do what you're doing. And we look forward to you taking the Indian national anthem across the world. You've done the Britishers. Now please do others as we move forward to our other independent.
Greece and Israel is next, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for our guests.
Thank you so much.